I had to do this video. Take a bowel movement. I'm gonna have to do it again. With that being said, I was sounding like Saint on that motherfucker. Sounding like how people characterize Lil Wayne sounding. It's in them timelines we're about to talk about. With that being said, yesterday I had been doing spirit work on myself, energy work. I'm gonna have to see somebody for Reiki to get them wetback motherfuckers out. That's some extremely sadistic shit. Them motherfuckers, I feel her trying to control my consciousness right now. I thought I was getting my shit back yesterday. I was playing 1150 hertz. That's some, I was shown by various spirits and all of that. Those are some evil, selfish, conniving, egotistical motherfuckers. From what I understand, this Maria Tavarez, a Parafin, wants to, make me stay dead, keep me out some timelines so that she could, try to get me to the point of death. As a matter of fact, going back to May the 1st, 2024, she had pulled me into Santa Muerte's realm, her hell realm, and they have been trying to, fully pull me in ever since. With that being said, from what I understand, she wants to feed off of my blessings and feed off of me as a sacrifice and keep me from being able to get my shit back. And she's living a life of O'Reilly. From what I understand, the terror business is booming. They're doing extremely well. Gotta see when I'm going there. They're doing very, very well. They're thriving. They're making a lot of money. And from what I understand, she drives a Porsche that, she borrowed, from the people she worked for as a maid, got on Univision and all of that, and I was shown, one night some of the shit she got that she stole from me. With that being said, I got to do something about that motherfucking, I came to, I forgot what they call it. But, I was at my wit's end yesterday, so I started pulling out 1150 hertz, trying to get my shit back, That's highly effective for getting, transcending spirit boundaries and all that borders. 117 hertz along with 156 hertz. That's 156 hertz. Along with 165 hertz and 115 hertz are very, very good, but 1150 hertz, I know it's used for, I forgot what they call that. It's supposed to be a form of frequency therapy. The whatchamacallit, it's supposed to get rid of cancer cells, that frequency. But it works for, spiritual issues. Like if people try to hide your shit in the spirit plane, 1150 hertz is very effective. If they try to block you from using that frequency, I know you use 3400 hertz to correct it, but you could put zeros like I was explaining in the video yesterday when I thought I was well. After trying to cure myself, that's why I say I'm gonna have to go to somebody for Reiki and get that wetback motherfucker off. I gotta find somebody that's good, that I could trust, somebody that's effective. With that being said, I'm gonna have to, go somewhere to get this bitch off because she's all in my soul consciousness, all in my consciousness and all of that. And, from what I understand, she has me in a box or something going back to that May the 1st, 2024 timeline. In that, in that timeline and all of that physical, I just, the gall of it, you know, it's like, this is an old fucking bitch. This bitch should be fucking dead. I shouldn't be, I shouldn't be close to that. And she's been unraveling my soul consciousness, trying to get me close to that as much as she can since that time. It's terrible. With that being said, you know, yesterday, I thought I was in a good position where I could do a video. And, you know, a regular video like I used to do before all of this, the soul swapping and shit happened. With that being said, that shit, you know, I saw this the other fucking night, you know, trying to rescue my parents in that hell realm. You know, whenever I call on my parents for help, I get roach attachments, entity attachments, meaning they ain't alive. I remember one night when my parents were trying to, you know, my mother was trying to put me back in my body in that August the 22nd, 2022 timeline. From what I understand, Maria Tavarez, that's why she's, I think, in part doing the energy harvesting, give to this motherfucker in that timeline. You know, some remove my entity attachments as I speak. And the roaches try their best to put it back. But, going back to that timeline, what is it that I want to say? From what I understand, her and the Illuminati, they're directly under the demiurge. That's why, you know, they got, I think Seth Rogen is a celebrity. You got to work with the source. Be under the source. Don't be fucking with no demiurge. Like I explained in the video yesterday, they derive from a sacrifice. You know, I know the original name of Jesus, Jesus, if you want to call it that. He was actually a black man with a very common Greek name. And he was born on the island of Patmos. And they put him in the roach realm. And the whole thing about the moon, soul matrix, you know, God actually comes from there. He represents the lunar. It's very, very true. You know, God as we know it to be, the system of God, really, it's like a bureaucracy. You know, you got the ultimate God, and then at, you know, the bottom, you got the segues, as I call them, you know, that's part of the bureaucracy. And I believe that Jesus, as we know him to be, is a sacrifice. Same thing with the Virgin Mary. You know, got placed in a horrible hell realm. I think, you know, I don't want to say too much. But, anyways, with that being said, you know, I gotta, like I said, I gotta go to somebody for Reiki because it's just too much shit going on with this wetback bitch. If it wasn't for them road spirits, I would have been taken over a long time ago. So with that being said, you know, that timeline is real. I've had spirits connect me to it, and everything else is real. You know, on top of this shit with being fleeced of my fucking innate, precious, valuable to me, astral, you know, body parts. Like I'm not gonna even insult animals by saying this. You know, I saw that my parents, you know, that's why I made that shirt, like I said yesterday, were in her consciousness, as well as Mayor Amschel de Rothschild, you know, as a sacrifice. They have him in the place where, you know, it's depressing, but I've lost so much soul consciousness to the point where I could barely cry. They have him in a place where he's barely his soul consciousness. He's like down to a flicker of a light of his soul consciousness. You know, where he's constantly being cut up. And I heard that Amschel Mayor de Rothschild was the most, I don't want to say hospitable, but helpful. He was the most he was the one trying the hardest to help. Not the hardest to help. Charitable is the word I'm looking for. Charitable, reminds me of the hospital. Charity, my mother, once worked at, and she used to complain about that motherfucker. She would come home late at night. My parents went through a lot of hell. That timeline is real, and they shouldn't be going through this. And then, now they bring that selfish-ass wetbag bitch, Maria Tavarez, or Parafin, whatever her name is. I think a rapist daddy's name was Raul Vargas. Archangel Michael's name, who her Archangel Michael is based off of, her baddie, is Raul Vargas III. That's the name of her Archangel Michael. Use 694-695 hertz with discernment, because they like to use trickery and put other people's names or use other people who can't fight back as disguises. With that being said, my parents, I know that timeline is real. I'm going to say it right now. This how she got, this how she got hooked up with him. Look, I'm going back, okay. I heard that through their demiurge, they set it up to where I can't even get back in my body. That's why it's best to be under the, the source, God of light. I know the celebrity Seth Rogen was under him. That's why, his shit don't get blocked if he don't do something that, demiurge or whatever will tell him what to do. Like with the baby, he was under Satan. And Satan was telling him, don't fuck with the Rainbow Coalition. As a matter of fact, I was talking about Lily Tino and, getting back to the where I used to be, and I was saying how, I don't feel like this is my timeline, because where I come from, people were extremely, if you spoke negatively about transgender people, even fucking cold, hard ass thugs would come out and be like, right, people ain't, it was just common sense, logical approaches to things, even if you ain't spiritual, back in my timeline, especially that August the 21st or 22nd, 2022 timeline, people were developing a more spiritual consciousness of seeing the soul. It was no longer just falling to, corporal instinct. Oh, she good. It was like, all right, what can you bring to the table? All right, I wouldn't want somebody fucking with me or sexually harassing me. So why are you doing this to this lady? Where the entitlement coming from? Why do you feel entitled? Why do you feel like you should be disrespectful? I see a lot of comments on it bashing her because of who she is. She got a right, that's a woman, to walk into a fucking female bathroom. And I'm going to say this right now. As somebody, during this curse, I noticed that, as I have, proselytized before, gay people and transgenders got the souls of the opposite sex. That's who they are. The soul is who you are. You can't negate that. You can't argue with me. That's incontrovertible. Don't even, especially what I know. I can consider myself transracial. My soul matrix is white. Is white. Strong. That Swedish past life is strong to me. So transracialism is real too, so, don't dismiss that. With that being said, I was talking about, and I really wanted to publish it because I thought, through my energy work I had healed, but it's a long story, I'm off. I got a lot of work to do. With that being said, she got every right to call a motherfucker out on their bullshit. Because at the end of the day, it's like, years ago when I used to belong to a feminist collective. And I remember there was a young lady who had a problem with her Mexican daddy beating on her mother. And she was a very, very nice young lady. Her name was Patricia. And I remember, I was telling her how, when I would go into places and say something, there would be a much wider change that would concomitant with it. She say you're an agent of change, and that's exactly what Lily Tino is. But, you know, she kind of goes about it in an irritating manner, but it's necessary, it's requisite to bring about much needed change, to change the overt hostilities in society towards, you know, people who are marginalized. It's like, for instance, when I was on the bus yesterday, I was on coming back from Fig, and so I'm wearing my Trump hat and all of that, you know, and I'm wearing my shirt, you know, in remembrance of my people, because that timeline is real. You know, I actually got a much longer video that I'm gonna have to finish on Lily Tino. Anyways, with that being said, they had people who were, you know, noticed the hat, and they started, you know, lambasting the young sex workers out there getting arrested. I kind of want to see the ICE raids out of curiosity. I'm like, I want to see if this shit's real, because it don't feel like it's real. Just curious. I want to talk about that shit in the future and what I saw. I was told that this shit is coming, and with the way Trump, the real Trump is, I didn't believe it. It's an entity attachment. Make a long story short, I was the only one to say, why are y'all so hostile and abrasive towards these women when they're not doing anything against your will or other people's will, and they're not doing anything without consent? The niggas are giving up their dicks and their money with consent. Why should they be fucking brood horses, you know, to give their pussy away for free? You know, the biology of a woman is to want money because she has the kids, therefore she seeks support. With the man, his, you know, it's given to my demiurge, his biological predisposition is to want to sow his seed with as many women as possible so we can keep the species going. So when you take all of that logic, that rationale into context, why should a woman not fucking charge? That's just stupid. And in my original timeline, that was understood. People interface with the soul. They understood the soul more. Even organic portals. You know, here is just like slapstick, like very, very superficial understandings of people and an inability to understand motherfuckers on a deeper level. You know, to understand people on the soul level. I don't like this shit. I really don't fucking like it. Yeah, I used to wear my Trump hat. I used to have an ICE immigration. Look good on me. Just like that black shirt with my family in the Border Patrol. You know, it's a very depressing timeline I'm in. I don't like it. I really don't fucking like it. That's why I want to say something about the ICE raids in the future. With that being said, getting back to the thing with the Rothschilds, they do, you know, when they came in, you know, look, Maria Tavarez of Parafin, she was under the network of Santa Muerte. And I'm going to say this, I remember the night when DJ Khaled, all of them, you know, I heard Lil Wayne comes direct from the demiurge, and in that timeline, I got two kids with him, a little boy and a girl, that don't look right in the spirit plane because it's a spirit operating in my body. So when they inherit shit, you know, because she's so close to the physical, they don't look right. They look like mishmash, fat, nasty ass white, you know, people. You know, from what I understand, this woman, I know her timeline started at Radio City Music Hall and Atchafalaya Bay. And she's supposed to be from Destrehan, Louisiana. And I remember, you know, people on motorboats from Destrehan, Louisiana coming to me in an astrovision when I was living in Malibu right before all of this started. I thought it was to lend a helping hand. Turns out it was to lend a hand to her and get me out of my body. You know, I remember the night when they slapped their timelines on my back. That shit's no joke. With that being said, I believe her name, and my dad, coming from that timeline, he told me he died on August the 20th, 2023. You know, I remember having, you know, nearly dying in my sleep and having Dan Aykroyd come through. I heard, you know, that's why he runs Crystal Vodka. He's aligned with Baron Samedi to save me. And I remember my family, my brothers and all of them, and my parents being alive, being, active, speaking and all of that. That's a sign somebody ain't in their body. So I remember, so I know that shit's real. So I remember my daddy, telling me her name, and I think it's Ashley Terrell or Renee Wellinger. I'm trying to figure out exactly what the name was. With that being said, my parents, from what I understand, this person sacrificed my family. She got my parents taken out their body one night. It's horrible. Like I say, all I get is, roach or entity attachments of them. It got to the point where when my mother tried to rescue me one night, they got rid of my mother. They got rid of her higher self. You can always get somebody back. 3517 hertz can do the trick, along with 3571 hertz. 117 hertz combined with 800 hertz is best, because that works to revive physical body. So that could definitely revive spiritual, because all entity attachments of your people, ancestors, and all that shit live in your bones. There was a lot of good shit I was saying, and then all of a sudden it cut off. But anyways, as I was saying, they turned them into Vril at one point. And you can use 4200 hertz to change somebody back from being a Vril. Vrils are oftentimes entity attachments made of people, that the Illuminati targeted. They pay people like Selena Gomez. I'm going to say something right now. Whenever you see a motherfucker that ain't really doing shit and they're worth a whole lot of money, all of a sudden out the blue, that means they're getting paid by the Illuminati. It's like with Birdman, who I heard was a part of this. Of course, I don't know how true that shit is, but is involved in sex trafficking. His best artist, Juvenile. I remember, as a matter of fact, when Cash Money Millionaires used to be located out there in New Orleans East. They're not... they really haven't done much to justify 150 million, even off of Young Boy NBA, who I swear I saw an article where, look, he was doing prostitution low key. And I know the Illuminati hands out green cards for that, but they pay people like Selena Gomez and all of them. That's why she haunted. Motherfuckers into entity attachments, and then turn them into these entity attachments so they can't fight back. So you can use 4200 hertz to change real entities back to what they used to be, back into humans. 3517 hertz, them frequencies I just say, 3571 hertz, 117 hertz combined with 800 hertz, which could be used to revive the dead, to change a motherfucker back. It's hellish. I saw that. He's supposed to be the most hospitable. They were in his head. Mayor Amshirley Rothschild, then Maria Tavarez or Parafin's at that shop, 8704 Broadway Street, by 87 in Broadway. Back to that timeline, May the 1st, 2024. I know the phone number of them people is 323-778-7748. And that's just, it's hell trying to get them back. But you can use 1150 hertz. That's a frequency that can be fucked with. I believe it's supposed to be the right frequency, but you have to listen to certain audio for that. But play pure 1150 hertz, and that could be used to get anything in the astral back. I was using it to get my shit back from them people. They did something where they fixed it to where I couldn't get my shit back at from 8704 Broadway by 87 in Broadway. In Los Angeles, it's in South Central, and they're supposed to be open tomorrow, 90003. And I think their phone number is 323-778-7748 to contact the readers. Those are some evil motherfuckers, from what I was shown. Them motherfuckers, they want to feed off of me, keep me dead. I keep hearing her higher self say, feed off of me as a sacrifice to keep my blessings. I was shown in that May the 1st, 2024 timeline. That lady, was on telenovelas, on Univision, working in a wealthy person's home and all of that, driving a Porsche, and, it's like, this old bitch. But, it killed me to see my parents in that state, and for this wetbag bitch and them evil motherfuckers, like I say, that Illuminati shit is real. They were already in my timelines going back to 1991. Back then, I remember having recurring visions of meeting Jay-Z with a couple of other kids backstage. His real name is Sean Corey Corder. And I remember feeling like we got raped. Turns out, from what I understand, he stole my part of the Baphomet. And I've been trying to get it back, and that's when it's been held. So me and my spirit team did it so I could get back. They stole it. Another thing I want to emphasize, too, is I was having these visions in 1991. He didn't blow up with Big Pimp until 1997. With that being said, going back to this whole soul swapping thing, the Illuminati is in my timelines. I actually felt their presence one time, them stealing, parts of my consciousness, do some odious shit, against humanity I don't like. You use 694, 695 hertz to see. Some evil shit. With that being said, I was also shown that that person in that timeline who stole my body, I believe her name is Ashley Terrell or Renee Wellinger. An entity attachment of my father was telling me, a spirit of him. He was telling me he died on August the 20th, 2023. That timeline is real. He was telling me my family got sacrificed by her. From what I understand, Prince Andrew had thrown my brother Kristen. His higher self was confirming it with me, a female, the other day off of a boat. And it's funny, I kept having dreams and visions of this. Of that. From what I understand, this woman is also protected by him. I make sure I mention that. I don't remember. But anyways, with that being said, they threw him off of a boat as a sacrifice with a bag over his head, fully conscious. It's fucked up. Those are some evil motherfuckers. You can use 1248 hertz frequency to defeat them. 1150 hertz, and people throw your shit in the spirit plane to get your shit back from them especially. From what I understand, I think this is in part why that Maria Tavarez steals a lot of my shit. They placed her in charge of that August the 22nd, 2022 timeline where I got taken out of my body. And it's hard to find. They keep, she keeps fucking with my soul energy consciousness, so I can't connect to it. With that being said, I keep getting astral body harvested by her, so I can't, so I die and I can't get so she could, stay in my body. From what I understand, she with Lil Wayne. She got 2 kids. Their souls look very fucking weird because it's a spirit that's in my body in that timeline that's operating it. And, when she was alive, from what I understand, she looked a lot like June. What's that? Mama June. Big old fat white woman. Ugly with big and fat and nasty. And, you know, from what I understand, the kids look like her in the spirit plane, you know, big, fat, white looking and nasty and all of that. They look off. Because it's a spirit in the physical vessel that's operating very, very close to the physical plane. But from what I understand, they've been putting a lot, you know, they've been doing something where directly under the demiurge. That's why it's best not to be under the demiurge, any of that dark shit, you know, that, you know, make a long story short, them motherfuckers, you know, God as we know it to be, you know, actually comes from a sacrifice, and that is Jesus, Jesus. You know, I learned during this curse that Jesus actually, you know, was in fact black, and he was Greek, and he had a very common Greek name, and he was placed in the roach realm, and he's stuck there to this day, but his death gave rise to God as we know it, and they come from, you know, that's why God resonates with the lunar symbol, with the moon. He actually comes from the moon, you know, the moon spirit complex, soul complex, I could call it. That's where, you know, the hierarchy of God and all of that, you know, as we know it to be, comes from. It's like a bureaucracy, you know. There's gods that, you know, we connect to through our ancestors and all that, and it goes all the way up to the top to the ultimate God. And a lot of that was set up by the Cometians, Ra, Anubis, and all of that, I believe. You know, it's a lot I want to tell. You know, they were at odds with the Israelites and all that with darker skin. I don't want to go into too much detail, but make a long story short, I saw my parents getting cut up, destroyed every single fucking day. When they came in, you know, the Illuminati, they do something where they put like fucking shit over your crown chakras, just like that film, The Butterfly Effect, where your timelines start from within and then go out. You know, it's just like the old saying, as above, so below. You know, that's why your boy Ashton Kutcher was able to change, you know, timelines from within by using, you know, from what I've seen, it literally is true. Your body is a machine in the spirit plane and in the astral. With that being said, they placed demons over people's crown chakras, like with Kanye West and all of that, to keep them in. You know, it's funny too. I actually saw, you know, my future self, a red-haired woman, you know, walking over there, and we seen etheric walls and her passing by, and then she all of a sudden disappeared. Something told me to film it, but I couldn't get it quick enough. That was weird. So with that being said, I'm not done with this one, and I'm too young to die. Let that wetback bitch, you know, at 323-778-7748 die. This is a very fucked up situation. But they'll do things to keep you from being able to see where your people are. So use 1150 to get them back. You know, if they try to fuck with it, 3400 corrects frequency. More zeros that's added at the front and the end could help, you know, enhance its powers. When you add number 2, it gets shit back. But that's a powerful frequency. 960 gets rid of energy vampires, by the way. Or some Maria Tavarez Parafin. Hopefully she don't use any trickery to fuck with my spirits. But anyways, with that being said, I know that timeline is real, because when I looked at my soul consciousness, which is a record of your life, you know, it's fucked up. They had on there Kristen versus alcohol addiction, Carrie versus alcohol addiction. They had heavy curses of addiction placed on them that could literally kill their consciousness if they didn't give in. And it's just tragic and abysmal to see where my people are at in that timeline. It's real. I can't get back to the normal way in which I used to be because of that. I just can't. My reality, it's too weird. Then, you know, they bring this Maria Tavarez. That bitch is hard to get rid of. And then when she got on with the Illuminati, I remember that night when I was fighting that shit, I saw DJ Khaled and all of that. I could tell his soul consciousness, energy signature. That shit's real. You know, I took back my Baphomet, and they put me under some heavy shit, and I never agreed to any of it. I could have been a child prodigy if it wasn't for that. But that's beside the point. I'm concerned about my parents. But anyways, with that being said, they placed her in charge of that August 22nd, 2022 timeline. You know, and she keeps saying something about, I don't want you coming back to this, you know, so she could thrive. You know, keep her dead. That May the 1st, 2024 timeline. But that August 22nd, 2022 timeline, it's like a matter of life and death. They placed her in charge to keep me from getting back. And did something under their demiurge. Like I say, that's why you fuck with the God of light. You know, you don't fuck with all of that shit. They did something to block me from getting back. And I've seen that timeline, how it looks. You know, humanity could have transcended. We had the black sun, the astral sun. We could be like a Kardashev level civilization. We could have been. In house we could have been, you know, where you're still in the physical vessel, but you're also in the spirit plane and operating in the astral, just like with aliens. You know, this is the black sun. You know, they actually talked about an episode of The Outer Limits back in 1996, where they had people supposedly turning into reptilians to deal with it, and it became more ultraviolet. It emits, you know, rays vibrantly, like, you know, they're pulsing, shooting at you like a pulsar, a nebula. One of them celestial bodies I was a big fan of talking about, a quasar. This is it. I got shit to do. I got energy work. Like I say, I'm going to have to go to somebody for Reiki, because this bitch is too, engendered in my body to, you know, get something done. This is depressing. That's a wicked motherfucker. Want to kill somebody off just so you can have their blessings. That's a wicked bitch. And her lower self, I think her lower self's name is Eliza Vargas Martinez. I think, you know, you 694-695 her to see her maiden name. Phone 323-778-7748. Liza or Elsie or Elsa, Serrano or Solano. So anyways, in the current predicament, the obstacle is 5 of Pentacles. And you're in a very fucked up situation. Present position, 6 of Swords, you're going into a better direction, I feel. Somewhere you won't be adversely affected. Present, future position, justice. You're going to have great things coming your way, subconscious. 7 of Cups, you're gonna get a lot of it. 7 of Cups, you're hoping to get the prize. It's 4 of Cups goes, you've been in a sedentary position, but you're ready to get out that predicament. 10 of Cups, advice. Pursue happiness. Don't fear it. The Star. You have a lot of people that's envious of you. Don't let that shit thwart you. 8 of Wands, fears in your hopes card. Consciousness getting really, really thin. I'm talking about. You're going in the right direction. You're going in a very good direction. But make sure there's no deception. You know, make sure it's the right one. And it ain't something that's adversarial. 3 of Cups is the outcome. I feel like it's going to be you and you using your power to fight something off. With that being said, if you want a more personalized reading, please contact me at readingbyterror22 at yahoo.com. Y'all, peace.